So we're gonna get kind of a little bit of a different perspective from the auto dealership, just to kind of loop it all in. So everybody understands this is a global problem. It's not just an air conditioning issue. So, Don?
Yeah, so I guess the one
He's
thing
allowed
to
to
keep in mind is being with Enterprise, we're not with any particular manufacturers. We work with all of them. So unfortunately, the update from all of them is pretty bleak, just like everything you've already heard. So the question that I have is, so if the auto manufacturers produce X number of cars and there used to be X number of microchips in order to produce those cars, why now is there such a big issue? And they kind of referenced it, but the real thing that happened when COVID hit was two things. First, the chip manufacturers reduced their production for all the same reasons that they've already mentioned, try to social distance as best they could. But so did the auto manufacturers. They pulled back. You know, they couldn't do 3 8-hour shifts. They pulled it back to first none, and then 1, and then 2, until they felt comfortable getting everybody back online. But the other thing that they did was they reduced their orders for chips, anticipating that this was going to be a longer term effect than it really was. So now, reduction in chips, reduction in orders for chips by the manufacturers, but then the economy bounced back pretty quickly. But what happened is the chip reduction wasn't meeting demand, not from the manufacturers, but you had all the consumer electronics that spiked. Everybody going home, now working from home, remote working like we did. The schools did a lot of stuff online, so just upped. So even though the auto manufacturers decreased their need for chips, the need for chips still existed. Well, then when things recovered, all of a sudden now they went back to this order. There's this giant gap. It's going to take several years for that to really right itself. So as a result, just for some perspective, in 17 million vehicles were produced by the auto manufacturers nationally. This year, they've had a reduction of almost 7.5 million. So over 40% less vehicles hitting the market and being produced. A lot of those, unfortunately, are commercial vehicles, your pickup trucks and your cargo vans. Ford has right now about 70,000 completely built F-150s sitting, waiting on chips. So what they've continued to do is they've built vehicles, but now they're just unable to deliver them because they don't have the safety equipment, all the electronics, the computers, the ECMs that are in there are still missing the components necessary to get them on the road. So they're just sitting. 2022 model year, which actually the model year typically runs from August to July, their plan moving forward was just to reduce production, just acknowledging the fact there's not going to be enough parts to build all the vehicles. They're just going to reduce the number of vehicles they're going to build. On your tables, I've put 1 or 2 copies of the most current list, and even it's changed since I printed this yesterday, of manufacturers, and I pretty much cherry picked the ones that we see most typically used in the air conditioning industry. But if you look at it, you're going to notice that we're still a couple months away from 2022, and most of the 2022 model year vehicles are already cut off. You can't order them anymore. When that means you can't, the dealerships can't, nobody can. So they're cut off. We're going to have to sit and wait for the 2023 model year to come online. So that's not good. The way that the manufacturers that build the vehicles and the dealers who deliver the vehicles are trying to keep themselves right is increasing margins on less volume. The dealership's doing that by raising their prices. Don't be offended if you go to a dealership as an individual or a business owner and they want to charge you sticker plus a market adjustment up because they're just trying to stay afloat with less vehicles. The manufacturers are trying to increase their margins by lessening the amount of rebates that they get. So typically you go in, you buy a vehicle for invoice less whatever the incentives might be. Well, now those incentives have been lessened and now you're not paying invoice anymore, you're paying sticker or something worse than that. So you kind of have to go into the arena now to purchase vehicles with that understanding and understand that they're probably not going to negotiate. And the person that's going to come a couple, 2, 3 hours from now after you, when you walk because you think they're going to call you back, they're not going to call you back because the next person is going to buy the vehicle for an overpriced list. So just, you kind of have to know that that's going to be the case for a while. It's probably not going to change. We're anticipating that it will be at least 18 months from now before the supplies get back to a normal level, at least 18 months from now. And the reason for that is you've seen 2022 is cut off. So it's gonna have to happen in the 2023 model year, which they don't anticipate coming online, meaning the production lines for 2023 until next fall, which means you're looking at 4 to 6 months before those vehicles actually start hitting dealers' lots. So now we're talking about spring of 2023 before things might start righting themselves. So that's all bad news. How to navigate that right now is completely, I'm gonna tell you things that those who know me know I've never suggested anything that I'm about to suggest in all the years I've been doing this. Hold on to spares. If you have spare vehicles, unless you just have a surplus of them, which by the way, used vehicle market's out of control. So if you do, sell some of them because you're gonna make a lot of money on it. But I wouldn't suggest selling spares right now. Because when your vehicles that are in service need repairs,
And there's no parts.
it's normally a half day to maybe a day fix. It's now a week or two because they have to wait for the parts to arrive. What are you gonna do? You're gonna need those spares to put people into. Now, in an extreme case, for those of you who have maintenance facilities right built into your businesses, in the military, when I used to work in F-16, we used to have a canned jet, a cannibalized jet. So we parked it in the hangar, and for that 30-day period of time, we used to steal parts off of it and put them on aircraft that we needed to get up and running quickly because we didn't have time to wait for the supplies to get to us, okay? Not a bad idea right now. You know, I'm not suggesting you get deep into the guts of engines these days because they're, you know, way too complicated, but for things like your alternators, your outside of the engine stuff, brakes, things like that you can maybe take off one and use for another. You know, my position is to keep all things on the table, try to stay as flexible as you can. The best approach, which unfortunately, as you're seeing there, isn't available to you right now, is to factory order vehicles, which means you actually go to the dealership, tell them you don't want anything on their lot, you want to place a factory order. Assuming you still can, what they'll do is they'll place the orders, don't expect to see it for at least 6 months, okay? But if you think about when it's gonna get hot again, it's in about 6 months. So now's a good time if you wanna go ahead and get orders in for any vehicles you think you might need in the spring and summer of next year. Something I also never said is over order. If you think you need 10, order 15. What's the worst that can happen? 15 vehicles come to you. If you don't need them, I guarantee you there's other people in this room that would be more than happy to buy those from you for a profit on your end. Because there's not gonna be vehicles available, you're gonna have them. The dealerships will be glad to take those into their inventory if you need to cancel and over order. Because again, they're gonna turn around and sell them at a premium versus giving them to you at wholesale price. So, you know, those are just, you know, a couple of ideas to go in with right now, and I understand it. These are the products that you're installing, but you gotta get them there. And so, you know, the vehicles are kind of the way that you're tooling it done. So there definitely are ways to try to attack it. If you need any information regarding the industry, just let me know. I mean, that's part of MACA, that's part of my role is to make sure that I get information out. I know most of it's on the supply lines for the products that you guys are installing, so I don't wanna take any more time. But there are some ways to try to navigate through this that I think wouldn't be too challenging to take advantage of. The biggest issue is gonna be growth. You know, if you're looking to add 10 guys, this is probably the first time ever when it's easier to add an employee than it is to find a truck to put them in. Because historically, I've always been told, hey, Don, look, I'll take 10 more trucks, but I need 10 trained techs to put in them and I'll be ready to go. But right now, there just isn't the product out there, so.
Thank you.